Scream 7's trailer finally dropped. Yesterday, October 30th, the trailer for Scream 7 dropped online, and I had thought about coming home from work and trying to quickly record something where I kind of talk about everything, but instead I decided I kind of wanted to sit and think about what I'd seen. And this video won't be like a deep dive or a breakdown or anything like that. Like I said, I had taken a little bit of time, so I've seen the trailer a couple times now, and I took some notes on everything, and so really all this is going to be is just a couple things that stood out to me that I kind of wanted to talk about quickly. One of the things that immediately jumped out to me is that trailer description that we had read probably about a month ago was true. Obviously now I'm assuming because of the leaks they made a different edit of the trailer that features new footage and stuff, but a lot of the stuff that we had broken down does appear in this trailer. Most notably, the opening of the trailer being the couple staying at the Airbnb at Stu Macher's house, which I thought looked like a really fun scene, and I hope that we get to spend a little bit more time with those characters just because I like Jimmy Tatro a lot. I think he's very funny, and so I think if that's like the opening of the movie or anything, like I hope it's not just kind of like a quick, like they got there and then it's, kind of done. I hope we get to spend a little bit of time with them. And in that opening, one thing that immediately jumped out to me as well is like the color grading. I'm something of a slut for a cozy horror movie, and this movie has some vibes to it, at least from what the trailer would indicate. And so kind of getting away from the opening of the trailer, like I said, none of this is in any, like specific order or anything. A lot of this was just stuff that I was quickly writing down as I was watching the trailer over the course of 2 or 3 watches. So like I said, none of this will be in specific order, but something that I thought was interesting was when the description leaked online, it was kind of explained that there was something that would indicate that Tatum is Ghostface's target. And in this cut of the trailer, while she's very obviously heavily featured fighting Ghostface and under attack and everything, I still don't get a read that she's necessarily the target. Like Ghostface very specifically says he's not going to hurt her, not until Sydney is there to see it. So that would indicate that obviously Sydney is still the prime target in this movie, which I think we all kind of knew going in, but it's nice to have the confirmation that this will be Sydney's movie. Especially when you consider that over the last, the course of the last like 3 movies, there's been something of a like passing of the baton going on, and in those movies, even down to like the trailers, it does very much so feel like this is we're setting that up, that we want you to know that this is the next generation Scream, where in this it feels like there's a very healthy balance of Sydney and Tatum. So I think that they're finding a way to kind of more naturally transition versus being like, hey, we're gonna beat you over the head with this concept. That's what's happening here. Passing the baton. It's gonna be passed. We're passing it. There's gonna be a baton. It's going from Sydney's hand to Tatum's, because they like to kind of be a little ham-fisted with some of this stuff, but I like the way that this kind of feels. Can we talk about Ghostface too? Like, the last few movies have done this whole like Ghostface is different, I'm something different. And genuinely, without having to say any of that, without having to like again just kind of spoon feed us this concept, Ghostface feels different. There's a bitterness, a hate, a spite in this trailer that like I am very excited to see why. Like I can't wait to find out what the motive is, because it is a very different feeling Ghostface in my opinion. And I really like some of like the kills and some of like the energy that were featured in the trailer, like the opening alone, like when the girl's hanging from the chandelier and falls and Ghostface rolls over and opportunistically kills her. Like that feels like Ghostface. That feels so in universe, but it also is just this kind of, it gives this sense of like he'll do anything, he'll do whatever it takes, and I think that that's really cool. And we can't talk about a Scream movie without talking about Sidney Prescott unless we're talking about Scream 6, but we still were talking about it. We were just talking about how annoying it was that she wasn't there. um, I really like the way that they're kind of portraying her day to day, at least from what we've gotten to see. Like there's a very obvious, like she is a prepper, but she's also a mom and a wife, and she understands that there needs to be a balance. At least that's the way things look, like just very aesthetically, like everything about her life from what we were able to see in just this short trailer, you're able to get a very good sense like she's living that suburban, picket fence dream, but behind that suburban, white picket fence is a panic room and channels carved between brick and wall so that her and her family can potentially safely escape if need be. and based off of everything that's happened to Sidney Prescott, because again, this isn't somebody like Laurie Strode where, like this is one linear timeline. So it makes sense that like by this point, by 7 movies in, she's like, no, fuck this. I'm gonna build my life around apparently what's gonna continue to happen to it. And another thing that I kind of appreciate about that is I feel like if you take her in the direction that you took somebody like Laurie Strode in Halloween 2018, you're kind of undoing the point of her being the survivor that she is. She's a fighter, and that's something that they highlight in these movies. So if you go too far in a like doomsday direction, she's surviving, but is she living? And I feel like with a character like Sidney Prescott, that's something that's like wholly dependent on how she feels. Like I feel like if you take that optimism and that hope of a normal life away from Sidney Prescott, you take away from the charm of these movies. And not to keep coming back to Halloween 2018, but there is a very obvious kind of parallel, and that's why I keep going there. Like right down to like scenes where you're watching as like Tatum and her friends are walking down the street, it all feels very familiar. Even down to like the coziness of some of like the outside like shots, like there's like a coldness, but it feels very fall. It feels very like natural. And that's something that I really appreciated about that Blumhouse trilogy is like those like scenes where like Allison's out walking with her friends and everything. Like those were such good exposition scenes, but they were also just fun world building. You got to spend time with these characters and get to know them. And so if they're taking pages out of Halloween 2018's book, it makes sense because of the franchise that this is, obviously lending a lot of homage to Halloween. But I also think it's cool that then we're doing this whole like kind of requel thing, and we're still doing that. We're now just playing off of, instead of 78, 2018. And throughout the run of the trailer, we are introduced to a lot of like the new cast and stuff like that, but everything happens so fast, and really the only points of the trailer that we focus on do centralize themselves around Sydney and Tatum. There's a little bit of dialogue from Gale at one point and other characters as well, but largely you're just kind of seeing quick cuts and montage. But one thing that jumped out to me that like I think we all kind of saw coming, but I hope that this is a misdirect, because I would hope that they wouldn't show this in the trailer, is like, is Mark gonna die? Like I feel like Mark's gonna die. Like, and they kind of showed that too much. Like you see Ghostface tackle him through a tarp. The tarp is on him, and then the camera goes from like an outside point of view to Mark's point of view through the tarp looking at Ghostface, and he absolutely gets stabbed. Blood is filling the tarp. So I'm hopeful that there's some sort of clever misdirect there happening, and that they didn't just tell us that, because that would be a bit of a bummer. The last couple things that I kind of wanted to jump on and talk about are just these hints that I think we've all been waiting for. I think we've all been really excited to find out how they were going to handle the return of Stu Macher and what that's going to look like. I am really happy that that element of the trailer description wasn't present in this. I don't want to see him in marketing, really. Like, do exactly what you did this time. His voice, little things that hint and stuff like that. But ultimately, my takeaway from certain bits of dialogue, like, reminds me of where we grew up. And, uh, and, I'm not hiding anymore. Like, those little bits of dialogue, I think that they're meant to obviously get us as the viewer into thinking like, oh shit, it's Stu. This is Stu. He's here. But I think that this will be a character that was either relevant and brought up at some point in the past, like a Leslie Mocker, or I don't think that this is going to be Stu, unfortunately, for the Stu fans out there. I think that this trailer kind of heavily gave that away, unless they're trying to do this version of expectation. Um, my read on the whole situation is, if you're going to beat me over the head with the fact that Stu is going to be in this movie, the house, the tag at the end of this is going to be fun, and then the little bits of dialogue that would indicate that it's somebody from Sydney's past, it tells at least me that's probably not all true, but it is probably somebody from her past, just somebody that we haven't considered yet, or somebody that we maybe haven't been introduced to. And I think with the heavy feature of like, Ghostface burning down the Mocker house and other elements, just kind of scattered throughout that would indicate that Stu is kind of like the legacy killer of this movie. I think it makes sense that like somebody like Leslie Macher would probably be the killer at the end of this, but I guess we'll see. And the last thing that I really wanted to talk about is this whole like I'm burning it all down concept that this movie and the fire motif of the movie and everything. I think it's really cool, visually striking. I love the poster. I love the shot at like the end of the trailer of Ghostface walking out of Stu's house while it's burning down. I think that's so cool. Again, though, it is very obviously a parallel to Halloween 2018, and that has me a little worried. I don't want to see too much of like the like homage or like the little kind of callbacks to or I want this movie to stand on its own because I think out of all of the Scream movies that we have, Scream 7 is kind of coming out in a very, very pivotal time for the franchise, and a lot has happened behind the scenes that have complicated things. I think that this movie absolutely needs to stick the landing because the fan base is very divided right now. And that's not something that we're going to talk on the channel at any point. We're the least qualified people to talk about anything geopolitical. We're both, you've heard us talk. But I think that if this movie underperforms just based off of word of mouth, the already kind of torn and fractured fan base is going to kind of lose faith. And so I think this is the exact movie that they need to get things right, and they can't find another, we have to go back to passing the baton. They have to do it right this time. And so seeing that they're taking such heavy influence from another movie that's pretty relevant in the zeitgeist has me a little apprehensive. With that said, ultimately, I absolutely love this trailer. I think everything about it looks great. There are so many just great shots, so many things that like I wasn't expecting to see in it, like that would stand out to me. Like just the cinematography as a whole is something that like again, I'm a slut for a cozy movie, and the vibes are just immaculate. But like I wasn't expecting to see so much of like the violence in the movie, and that also is a concern. I hope the next trailer kind of gives us a better idea of where this is going, and at least an idea of why this is happening. But overall, as far as a first trailer goes, I think that this was excellent. I think they knew that we've been very patiently waiting, and they gave us something really special. If you are new to the channel, for the last few months we have been pretty heavily covering Scream 7, and that is not about to start or stop now. If anything, we are very much so ramping up to kind of dive in headfirst on all of this. So over the coming weeks, expect theories based off of what we now have seen in the trailer. Expect just everything. We're going to do as much as we can to stay on top of all of it. We're not really a news-based channel, but I think with something like Scream 7 that's so like heavily discussed in the community, I think obviously it kind of makes sense that we're going to dive a little bit more into this than kind of just the average horror movie that's coming out. If you are a returning viewer, we appreciate you very much. As we've been saying, like we've been getting a ton of engagement, especially with Scream 7 content, so we are very appreciative of all of it. We are going to have a blast breaking all of this down, talking about all of it with you guys. Thank you so much for the feedback. Thank you guys so much for the time that you're taking to watch our videos. It means the world to us. And again, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe. Like I said, we're just getting started talking about all this, so we're excited. And that's gonna do it for today. It's Halloween, so I'm gonna go and do some Halloween festivities with my family. But thank you guys very much for taking the time to watch this if you're here. Love you guys. Again, subscribe. Thank you. Bye.